Theodore Robert Cowell was born on November 24, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont, in a home for unwed mothers. His mother, Eleanor Louise Cowell, presented him to her parents as her younger brother to conceal his illegitimate birth. In 1951, Eleanor married Johnny Bundy, and the family relocated to Tacoma, Washington. Ted adopted his stepfather's surname. From childhood, Ted showed ambition and a strong desire to stand out. He was intelligent but often felt like an outsider among peers. In school, he compensated with excellent grades and an interest in politics and public life. By high school, he was already planning a successful career, envisioning prestigious education, political involvement, and a status that would allow him to control his image and destiny. In 1965, Ted graduated from Woodrow Wilson High School with strong marks and enrolled at the University of Puget Sound, where he began studying Chinese language and urban studies, subjects he believed could lead to opportunities in diplomacy or government service. In 1966, Ted transferred to the University of Washington, switching his major to psychology. He viewed understanding human behavior as a key advantage in communication, persuasion, and achieving personal goals. His studies progressed successfully. He graduated with a bachelor's degree in psychology in 1972, earning honors. Alongside academics, Ted built a public image. He volunteered at a Seattle crisis hotline, suicide prevention phone service, honing skills in listening and emotional influence. He became active in Washington State's Republican Party, participating in campaigns, distributing leaflets, speaking at rallies, and assisting in the governor's office. His ambitions included a career in politics or law. He saw himself as a successful attorney, possibly a prosecutor or politician, leveraging charisma and intellect to influence society. During this period, he had serious romantic relationships, most notably with Elizabeth Klopfer, Liz, who became a significant figure in his life. Ted planned for a stable family while simultaneously pursuing complete personal independence and control. In 1974, Ted was accepted to the University of Utah Law School in Salt Lake City. He chose law as a tool for realizing his ambitions, dreaming of becoming an attorney specializing in complex defense or prosecution cases. The move west was strategic, to expand his network, build new connections, and start an independent life away from his past. He continued political involvement, supporting Republicans and positioning himself as a promising young professional. His plans included completing law school, passing the bar exam, and beginning practice, possibly in Washington or Utah, with an eye toward higher positions. In August 1975, Utah police stopped his Volkswagen Beetle and found suspicious items. Ted was arrested on kidnapping charges, related to Carol Duranch, who escaped. He chose to represent himself in court, using his legal knowledge to delay proceedings and showcase his intelligence. In 1976, Ted was convicted in Utah and sentenced to 1 to 15 years. He was later extradited to Colorado on additional charges. He escaped twice, first in June 1977 from Aspen, jumping from a second-floor courthouse window and fleeing into the mountains, and second in December 1977 from Glenwood Springs Jail, through a hole in his cell ceiling. After the second escape, Ted headed to Florida, changed his appearance, lived under an alias, and attempted to restart his life. His plan was straightforward: disappear, evade capture, and possibly resume a legal or professional career under a new identity. He settled near the Florida State University campus in Tallahassee. In February 1978, he was arrested in Pensacola after a chase in a stolen vehicle. This ended his attempts to remain free. Ted was tried in Florida for multiple cases. He represented himself again, turning the proceedings into a public spectacle by demonstrating legal knowledge, charisma, and confidence. In 1979 to 1980, he received 3 death sentences, electrocution. While in prison, he married Carol Ann Boone in 1980, and they had a daughter. Ted used interviews and conversations with psychologists and investigators to craft an image of a misunderstood genius and, toward the end, offered partial cooperation in hopes of delaying execution. In his final years, he provided information about cases in exchange for more time. On January 24, 1989, the sentence was carried out at Florida State Prison. It is often tempting to search for the roots of violent behavior in childhood. In the case of Ted Bundy, his early years appeared relatively ordinary on the surface, though one significant detail later drew attention. For much of his childhood, he was led to believe that his mother was actually his older sister. On November 24, 1946, Eleanor Cowell gave birth to a son in Vermont. She was unmarried at the time, and the circumstances surrounding Ted's paternity remained unclear. When she returned home with the baby, the family decided to present Eleanor as his sister, while his grandparents were introduced as his parents. Years later, Bundy discovered his birth certificate and learned the truth, a revelation that reportedly had a deep emotional impact on him. Some accounts suggest that Eleanor's father, Samuel, was a strict and domineering figure within the household. Family members later described him as temperamental and harsh. Ted's grandmother struggled with serious mental health issues and underwent medical treatment during that period. However, it is important to emphasize that difficult family environments alone do not predetermine criminal behavior. There was one childhood incident often cited by biographers. At around 3 years old, Ted reportedly arranged kitchen knives around a sleeping relative. While the story has been repeated many times, experts caution against drawing definitive conclusions from isolated childhood events. Eventually, Eleanor left her parents' home and moved to Tacoma, Washington. She later married Johnny Bundy, who adopted Ted and gave him his surname. By most external measures, Ted's upbringing stabilized. Yet those who knew him described him as reserved and socially distant. During his time at the University of Washington, Bundy met a young woman from a wealthy and socially prominent background. Their relationship lasted about a year before ending. According to later accounts, Bundy took the breakup very hard and internalized feelings of rejection. After spending time away from school, he eventually returned to Washington and resumed his education, studying psychology. Around this time, he began a long-term relationship with Elizabeth Klopfer, often referred to publicly as Liz Kendall. She would later play a significant role in the investigation. On the surface, Bundy's life appeared promising. He volunteered at a crisis hotline, worked on a political campaign, and was admitted to law school. He presented himself as ambitious, intelligent, and personable. However, beginning in 1974, young women began disappearing near university campuses in Washington and later in other states. At first, law enforcement agencies did not connect the cases, as they occurred across different jurisdictions. Witnesses consistently described a polite, well-spoken young man who sometimes wore a sling or pretended to have an injury, asking for assistance. Investigators later concluded that Bundy exploited people's willingness to help others. By presenting himself as vulnerable, he lowered suspicion and gained trust. He often drove a Volkswagen Beetle, which eventually became a key piece of evidence in the investigation. As the disappearances increased, patterns emerged. The victims were typically young college-aged women. Law enforcement began coordinating across states, a process that was far more complicated in the 1970s than it would be today. One major turning point occurred when a young woman named Carol Duranch managed to escape after being lured into his vehicle under false pretenses. Her testimony became crucial in identifying Bundy. Shortly afterward, police stopped Bundy for suspicious behavior. During the search of his car, officers discovered items that raised serious concern, including restraints and tools that could be used in an assault. Though this alone did not prove murder, it strengthened the case against him. Elizabeth Klopfer also contacted police multiple times, expressing concerns about Bundy's behavior and unusual items she had found among his belongings. Initially, her reports did not result in immediate action, but over time, investigators began taking the information more seriously. Forensic analysis of Bundy's vehicle later revealed hair evidence linking him to victims. Combined with witness testimony, this significantly strengthened the prosecution's case. In 1976, Bundy was convicted in the Duranch kidnapping case and sentenced to prison. While incarcerated, he demonstrated both intelligence and manipulative skill, at times earning trust from staff. He also made 2 dramatic escape attempts, which further intensified national media attention. Later, he was extradited to Florida, where he faced more serious charges, including murder. The trial became one of the first in the United States to receive extensive television coverage. Bundy chose to participate actively in his defense, at times appearing confident and composed in court. Prosecutors offered a plea agreement that would have resulted in life imprisonment in exchange for a full confession. Bundy declined. He was ultimately convicted and sentenced to death. The case became one of the most widely reported criminal trials of the decade, drawing hundreds of journalists. During his time on death row, Bundy gave interviews in which he attempted to explain his behavior. He claimed that exposure to violent pornography had influenced him, a statement that many experts view as an attempt to shift responsibility away from himself. Criminologists generally agree that such material alone does not create violent offenders. In the years before his execution, Bundy provided partial confessions and information about additional victims. Some investigators believed he hoped this cooperation might delay his sentence. On January 24, 1989, the death sentence was carried out. Outside the prison, crowds gathered, some in anger, others in solemn reflection. The case had left a lasting mark on American society. It exposed serious gaps in communication between law enforcement agencies and ultimately contributed to improvements in interstate cooperation and criminal profiling methods. Today, Bundy's case is often studied not only because of the crimes themselves, but because of the broader lessons it offers: how manipulation can hide behind charm, how fragmented systems can allow offenders to evade capture, and how important it is to focus on victims rather than notoriety.